Without any waste of time, I would like to call upon the clinical psychologist, Ms. Mothoa, to come and address us in relation to this victim-centric concept. Can we give a round of applause to Ms. Mothoa?
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate this opportunity to stand before you, and so the pressure is on because my elders went before me, but I think they've laid a good foundation. So I was just thinking, clinical psychology, should I come here and start breaking down, all the diagnoses that are there? Being Mental Health Awareness Month, I think this intervention couldn't have come at the right time. And so reflecting upon a lot of things, I realized that as a nation, being exposed to so much violence, to so much atrocities in different ways, through the news, through the social medias that we see, then I think the whole of South Africa as a community, we all are victims. If you're growing up in a community, whether your parents are fighting or it's the neighbor, you are already being exposed as a victim. I'm saying this because the reviewed diagnosis of PTSD, which we all are exposed to, post-traumatic stress disorder, actually they reviewed it before. They used to say that a person who has experienced the stressor, the person who has actually either been exposed to the death or injured, or who has been sexually traumatized, is actually the person who tends to experience PTSD later on. But they realize that the professionals who work in systems where they're working either with victims or perpetrators, I hope I'm being appropriate using perpetrator, they are also exposed. So even if you're a witness, even if you yourself experience the fear of death or the fear of being exposed to the violence, even if you're not injured directly, you will experience PTSD. Meaning that mentally, emotionally, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act can be affected. And if you are affected in that way, we tend to relive those experiences. We tend to have nightmares, we tend to have flashbacks, and mostly we avoid those places. But if you are in DCS, how do you avoid working with offenders? How do you avoid being a police officer looking at the dockets that exposes you to what you've seen? It's quite a challenge. How do we avoid being in South Africa when all these things are happening each and every day of our lives? So we are actually putting out a challenge out there to say, they have committed the crimes, they have done the deed, let them come back to the community. Because we are a nation that is, we believe in Ubuntu, but this is the very same person who has hurt us. This is the same person who is our person, but now how do we make them, how do we allow them back to be our person? When I was in internship, the first case that we had to deal with, I was in Sterkfontein in the forensic unit. So we were working with the 30 days observations. The first case that we had was a murder case. And we had to look at this docket where a partner stabbed the fiancé 26 times. And within a short period of time. So it looked a bit orchestrated. He has an accident, he stops, he's being towed, he goes in there, he has 650 in his hand, he was shot with 150. He goes in, the tow truck guy hears some screams, he comes back, he is all bloodied up, gives him the money, he calls the police. When the police arrived, that woman's head was decapitated. It was only hanging by a bit of these muscles. And when we saw the guy, very short, small, very scrawny, respectful, member of the community, when people went to the funeral of this lady, they said, we cannot believe he did that. He was a good person. He did this and that for us. And it was so difficult for them to match these. And when we did the assessment, we realized that he has a personality disorder. In the past, it was linked to psychopathy, sociopathy, but we call it antisocial personality disorder. In there, we can see that the people lack empathy. They have the disregard for human life. And most of these people, they do not show remorse. These are the people that we're dealing with. And when we're talking about a victim-centered approach, most of them, they come and they say why. They want closure. And the question is, are the offenders willing to be open and be vulnerable? Remember, as a nation, all of us, we are exposed to this continuous stimulation. Why do we drink so much? Why do we self-medicate? Because we want to numb these feelings. It is too much for us to handle. So if you are so traumatized, if you are so overly stimulated, you need to shut down that flood of emotions, of thoughts. So we're basically moving around because we have to come to work. We have to feed our families. We have to serve. But at what is the cost to all of that? So I think, from my perspective, I feel we need a national intervention of healing. And what does it look like? All of us, we need to participate. Because it's not enough for DCS to do this on their own. It's not enough for our health system. We need the pastors, we need the shamans, we need the gurus, we need everybody to be part of the process, where we start actually sitting down and stopping to normalize what is abnormal. We need to call it what it is. If blood was spilled, if injuries were sustained, if people are still weeping and crying, if there's still a void and wounds are infested, we're gonna go around, if that is not healed, we're gonna go around bleeding on each other. And we are so sensitive. That is why it's so easy for me to strike. That is why sometimes it's so easy for me to say it's hopeless. Then I hang myself. So I think we need to move towards those spaces where these discussions allows us to be vulnerable. But we need people who can be able to hold those spaces. And when we do identify that treatment is needed, we need to be able to offer treatment. And we know treatment is expensive. So how are we going to come up with practical solutions? And I think this is why we're here. We're saying that practical solutions are here and we are willing to serve. And we need to do it in a way that I think the academics have said that we need to be able to have data. If the stats are saying this, then we need to also go back and check how many people in the communities are having access to interventions that allow them to heal, to interventions that allow them to let go of whatever that has hurt them. How do we sit down because it's not enough to say we have correctional facilities, but how have we done the work cognitively, using the very same social constructions that were there? We built them, we call them prisons at some point, we call them offenders and mapatiti. There is a certain power that comes with the words that we use. So how do we go back and bring up the new social constructions in a way that the way we perceive each other, the way we perceive certain, I think, certain acts that we tend to trivialize them or we tend to simplify them. We need to start having the language, but it has to be everywhere. It has to be in our schools, it has to be in our institutions. Even when we're sitting amongst ourselves, we tend to joke around these things. A typical example, during, I'm biased because I'm black, so I am going to talk about that experience there. A lot of weddings, I don't know if it's the same experience for you. They will tell you that it doesn't matter how hot it is. You will bend there, you will go through this, you don't come back here. And usually the instructions are for the woman. If you leave this house, you can never come back. So in a way, in our narrative, in our construction, we are saying that it's okay. You are married, we give him whoever license to do whatever that they need to do with you. So we have to be careful in how even in those levels, we are sending that message of creating victims and of creating offenders, because we are really empowering them. So how can we shift to a state where we're actually empowering each other in a way that builds us, in a way that creates that awareness, how we talk, how we behave, and how we hold those spaces of healing, and yes, spaces that allow us to grow. Things are changing. Are we changing with the times? The resistance is there. So the question is, at an individual level, even us, the stigma that we tend, to share and to actually go around increasing and spreading, are we also aware and responsible? Are we being responsible? So I think in this case, we really need to move towards a space of healing, a space of connectedness in the way we think, but it will be influenced by the way we speak, the way we talk. And we are asking for the media to be responsible. Don't always just show us these negative things on media, on public platforms. Share stories that will bring us courage, stories that will inspire us, stories that will change us, stories that will make us better people, and stories that will make us sleep at night. Because sometimes it is difficult to sleep at night. And I think, yes, we need to go to the Shebins. Our messages, we need to go there. Everywhere, the messages should be there, the posters should be there. Because we go there to drink, we go there to forget. So I think a space of healing is required, healing for all of us, not only once a year, but every day. We need to live the truth. And we need to be those people who bring the change. Together we can do it. And together we can actually bring change and we can bring healing. Thank you so much.